Welcome to the Explainer. What if national tragedy wasn't a punishment from God, but a demand? Today, we're diving into a really powerful rabbinic text that argues suffering isn't something we're just meant to endure. It's an urgent, divine call to action. Right at the heart of this text is this incredible metaphor. The author says, look, the harsh events that befall us, they're not just random bad luck. They are a hammer, literally knocking on the gates of our hearts to wake us all up from this slumber of inaction. So, let's get into it. How does this divine wake-up call actually work? Well, the author's whole point is that suffering isn't random at all. It's a message, and it's meant to provoke a very, very specific response from us. And this is a pretty radical idea when you think about it. The author is basically arguing that since we don't have prophets anymore, God has to communicate in a different way. So now it's the hardships, the struggles, the tragedies, they have become the divine messengers. And they carry a message that's pretty hard to ignore.
To back this up, the text gives us a perfect historical example, the rebuilding of the Second Temple. You have the exiles, they're back, but they're just sitting there. They're in despair, dealing with drought, poverty, just waiting. But then the prophets come along with a simple message: stop waiting, start building. And the text makes it crystal clear. The second they took action, everything changed. Their fortunes completely reversed. The action itself was the key that unlocked the divine blessing.
Okay, so this whole idea that we have to act first, it's not just a one-off story from history. It's actually built on a really deep theological argument about how the universe is wired. The author grounds this whole thing in a mystical concept called arousal from below. It's a Kabbalistic idea, and it's actually pretty straightforward. For divine blessing to flow down from heaven, we, human beings, have to do something down here on earth first to kind of kickstart the process. And this isn't just some abstract, floaty idea. The text shows exactly how it works, using the temple as the prime example. The model is so clear. We don't just sit around and wait for a perfect temple to drop out of the sky. No, step one, we get our hands dirty. We build the physical thing. That action, that's the arousal from below. And it invites divine reaction. And only then, step three, does the heavenly ideal descend and rest on what we've built. Human initiative is the first and most critical step.
Okay, but this whole argument for action, especially about settling the land of Israel, runs into a major potential roadblock, a huge legal question. Is this commandment even still valid today? Or did it expire thousands of years ago?
And this is one of the biggest debates out there. It all boils down to this. Is the commandment to inherit and settle the land eternal, or was it put on pause during the exile, only to be turned back on in the Messianic era?
So, the text lays out the two major positions here, and it's a real clash of titans. On one side, you've got Ramban, Nachmanides, arguing that, yep, it's an eternal commandment always in effect. On the other side, you have a major interpretation of his contemporary, Rambam, Maimonides, that suggests, no, the obligation was suspended once the exile began.
So how does the author try to settle this? Well, it gets into the weeds of the language, and it's pretty clever. It all comes down to one Hebrew word the Torah uses, Yerusha, or inheritance. And here's the key. In Jewish law, an inheritance is permanent. It's eternal. It can't be interrupted. So the author's conclusion is simple. Since the Torah calls it an inheritance and never says it was suspended, well, it must still be in effect. But it's not just about a legal debate. The author goes deeper, arguing that this connection to the land, it's not just a should do, it's the very lifeblood of the nation. It's a matter of survival. And this is where the argument gets really interesting. The author pulls a kind of brilliant move, using the words of Rambam, the guy from the other side of the debate, to prove his point. Rambam himself wrote that a Jewish people without the land of Israel would be like the destruction of the nation entirely. So the land isn't just a place, it's the nation's beating heart. Without it, the body simply can't live. And to really make you feel this, the author paints this incredibly powerful picture. It's a tale of two mothers. The land of Israel, that's the true mother. She nurtures you, she's your real home. But the diaspora, the exile, that's the stepmother. She might give you some security, but it's always conditional. She takes your energy, and in the end, she throws you out. It's a stark choice between a mother's embrace and a cruel guardian's house. All right, so to bring this all home, the text connects everything we've talked about back to one of the most famous, or infamous, stories in the Torah, the sin of the spies. But here's the twist. The author says we've been looking at that story all wrong. It wasn't about a lack of faith in God. The real sin, the core failure, was a failure of action. They let fear completely paralyze them, and they refused to carry out the command to enter the land. Think about it.
The text describes how the spies went from tent to tent, deliberately spreading panic and fear. They were basically running a propaganda of despair until the whole nation was just weeping. That collective failure to act, the author argues, that's the real source of every exile that followed.
And that right there brings the whole argument full circle. See, the text isn't just telling a story, it's setting up a direct challenge for today. It's saying that the current suffering is a historic chance to finally fix that ancient mistake. Instead of the spies' propaganda of despair, the moment calls for a propaganda of hope and building. Where their inaction led to exile, this new call to action is the path to redemption.
So in the end, this isn't just an academic exercise. The text holds up a mirror to history and says, look, suffering isn't a reason to despair. It's a call to correct an ancient mistake. And it leaves us, the reader, with one final unavoidable question. Knowing all this, what is the correct response?